I want to start by asking about your design of the new Sandy Hook Elementary School. How do you start a project like that?
Well, that's really a great question, Brandy, because we didn't start in with the answers in our hand of what to do. Our whole approach for most of our projects is to work very collaboratively with the client base. And in this case, the client base that we helped them create is the School-Based Building Advisory Committee, which was made up of 50 people in the community. People that are in charge of the school, people that are parents, students, neighbors, government officials, first responders. So the first step is really to get the group together that you know can give you the answers on where you need to go. And this was a situation where nobody knew where to go. It was a community in distress, and we wanted to make sure that everything we could do would help them come through that distress and not add to it, which could also be a problem in a situation like that.
So in thinking about that, how do you make sure a school is safe and secure, but also an inviting and warm environment for students to learn?
Well, that's the really the magic behind it. Obviously, we after an incident like this, and it happens all over, the first reaction for everybody is to build a fortress and put our kids inside this fortress. You know, you've heard them speaking about all of the hardening that they believe needs to happen in schools, when just the opposite is really true. And this is going back to your first question, where we started. We asked everybody on our committee, what environment would you want to have for your children to learn and to grow and to become responsible members of our society? No one then answered, said, I want a high walls where all my kids can only play in the courtyard. So first you have to get the community to understand what is safety and what we can do with a building. How safe can we actually make the students in a building? And from there you start marching through design. What we turn the equation around to, what is the best school that you could have for your children? And then let's make it safe.
I love that. What are some of the features that you incorporated into Sandy Hook that might be different from a more traditional idea of a school building?
Well, we tried to keep everything as traditional as possible, so that when the children did come back to this building and this site, they felt it was just like every other school. That was an important aspect of course, more wonderful than many schools. So we had to look. We use a set of principles called CPTED, CPTED, which stands for Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. These are easily accessible guidelines that every architect can work with, and that we worked with the National AIA to make a clearinghouse that has been funded by the U.S. government, and so that these communities can go to this clearinghouse and get these resources. Those resources the CPTED principles will help you design a school with a layering, not a hardening, but a layering of security elements that will make the school actually safer for the students. It will keep it as a part of the community, so it's open and accessible. And it actually does a lot of work to preventing those issues that are really the more important concerns in schools, like bullying. You know, because the percentages of students that actually might end up, suicide and other potential harm, much higher percentage of students in every school across this country that we really could be focusing on and spending our money on. The good news is the design principles of CPTED work for both the active shooter prevention, and in this case, really it's mostly delay, because we know we really can't prevent something like this, but it can delay and reduce the damages that are caused by it. And so, if I want to go on here, we did a lot of things. When you think about layering, we start at the boundaries. We create a perimeter that's identifiable, not necessarily a wall, but it could be, how you maintain the shrubberies. In case of Sandy Hook, there was forested wetlands, so it was really a wonderful place to be. We segregated the people as they come in and park. So you only have to watch certain areas that are the visitors areas, and you know where the visitors come from. So you you control that. We controlled the entrances to the school by creating a water garden in front of the school, which did a lot of things at once. Very proud of this element, and so you can imagine a security element being this water garden in front of your school. Well, we know we have issues with water in this country and water runoff. So we collect all the water off the roof and put it into this reinfiltration garden. We have little bridges across it, so you have limited entry. So anybody not crossing a bridge is already, the alarms go off. People can see that because we have glass in front of the school, not stone walls. And lastly, and even most importantly, when children arrive at the school, they see the water, they see the garden, they see the flowers, the plants, they see the seasons change, and they get a sense of, they get out of that car that you've gone through traffic, and you change your whole attitude because this natural environment is right there in front of you. It just so happens it makes the school very, very safe.
It sounds beautiful.
Yeah, it is, and it's a great experience as you go there and see that garden in front of school. It's an idea we'd like to see in many, not just school environments, but many environments. Instead of a hard barrier, it works just as well.
Well, you've been designing schools for going on 30 years. I have to imagine that your approach has evolved in that time. Do schools today have different needs than they did when you were first getting started?
Well, I would say in the 30 years we've been developing the needs that really have been there, besides the distance learning and what is the effect of COVID. And those things really go hand in hand with the principles that we already espouse, and that is that the school has to be an environment that is conducive to learning for the children. And we know what creates better learning outcomes: access to daylight, access to nature, even plants. We do art in our buildings, and even the sculptures of plants or the images of plants we put in our building are those elements that help students learn better because they're in a better position, a better place, sociology, and psychology-wise. They're in a better place in their own sense of who they are and well-being. And if they're healthier and have a better sense of well-being, they will learn better. So all this goes hand in hand. The things we're doing to make the school safer, and if you're making a new environment, you can easily make it safer. So these things work well.
We've talked about building a school from the ground up, but I know you do renovations as well. I read that the first project or the first school you worked on was a renovation. Is it possible to kind of retrofit or renovate existing schools to fit this idea?
Many existing schools, the answer is yes. This first school we ever did was an addition renovation, as you mentioned. And the building had a 1911 original core, and it had a 1950s addition. We tore down the 50s addition, and you find that the schools that are built of a certain era, which is 50s and 60s, aren't as compatible to what we know now about what we know now about excellent learning environments. They were really designed as industrial schools, and that's not the school methodology that you see today, especially when you talk about individual student learning styles. So if you take these principles of designing spaces that are conducive to learning, the program inside those spaces can change, and the spaces can survive many years. And in the case of the 1911 building, here it is. We renovated that almost 100 years after its original space, and it still was a wonderful part of the building. And we did a second building in town that also had a similar original building in addition. And we did a different design, but it kept the original building. People in those times cared more about their public institutions and the buildings they housed them. And that's the concern that we need to bring today. And that's what we brought to Sandy Hook and the town of Newtown. was there and ready and wanted to move to the future, not dwell on this past and this horrible incident in town, and they wanted to look to the future. And so a modern school building was done for them.
We've talked a lot about Sandy Hook, but are there any other projects that really you think your projects that really showcase some of what we've talked about?
Well, if you consider the SEPTED principles, those are principles that we use across the spectrum of our building design. We do a lot of work. Sandy Hook was suburban, but we do a lot of our work in these urban environments here in the Northeast. And in those cases, you have to use some different principles. Very hard to put a water feature in front of a school in downtown New Haven. But you can open it up. You keep it open so that they can see, though you have those eyes on the street. You may have heard that term in the past. So you make the whole community safer with each building that you bring to it. So we look at that as in our designs, no matter what they are, they're a research laboratory or a school. You take a look at how can this building contribute to the security of the entire neighborhood, not just that building itself. And that usually ends up being a much more open environment, which is good because those eyes on the street, if you are walking in the street and you know people are upstairs or in the buildings can see you, you're less likely to engage in activities that would be inappropriate. And so that principle is true across the world, really. And if you think of that, the benefit to that is people inside those buildings are also much more productive if they can see out and see daylight and be exposed to nature and what's out there. So we find ourselves using these same principles both inside and outside the building.
This is probably a question I should have asked right off the bat, but how do you define a safe school? Like, it's much more a part of our vocabulary in the past few years. I think we always just kind of viewed schools as safe, but this idea of a safe school, what comes to your mind?
Was having done these schools, I know pretty well, and the mayor of Newtown, where Sandy Hook is, stated it very clearly. You cannot plan for or stop an incident that happened there, and then it just happened recently, over and over again. You can't stop that because there's too many ways to we have an open society and you just can't be there. I mean, they have troubles at the Army bases, the same. They can't stop it there either. So you have to take an understanding that we can't stop the worst incidences. So what can we do to make the facility more secure? And in this case, the SEPTED principles bring about delay. It's one of those things. So, and that's where the layering is spoke about, and that's what I actually spoke to the President's Commission on School Safety in their report. That was the focus that I tried to be clear, is that it wasn't hardening, it was layering. So if you can bring these layers to whatever you do, you can create levels of security and delay that will protect as well as you can the incident of a tragic incident happening in that school. So you can't stop it all, but you can do a lot to do that. And so I would say a safe school is a place where the students feel comfortable and secure in that space, and at the same time are able to do what they need to do, in this case, learn, grow, and become responsible members of our community.
Perfect. Was there anything I didn't ask about that you wanted to make sure to add?
The majority of Sandy Hook was a brand new school, and you refer to what do we do about existing schools? And there is a huge stock of existing schools in this country, and it will take billions and billions of dollars to do for them what we did for Sandy Hook. So those students need to be the needs of those students really should be addressed. Those communities, those towns, how can we address them? Um, every school needs to have somebody looking at it in a design sense, looking at what design can we bring to this school that will make it safer? How can we add some layers? How can we add some more protection for delay? And if the federal government would release some of its school security funding to be used for design and planning, as opposed to just buying devices, that might allow a lot more communities to take a look in a holistic way what they can do with their school buildings. It's not the same thing as to add a bunch of cameras or add a bunch of door locks or these things that are one-offs that don't really get to the root of the factor. You need the root of the issue, and that is to do a holistic approach, review, look at every school building in your community and see what elements you can do to that. And then as the funding comes along, you have a master plan that you can begin to implement those elements that will then bring that safety and security.
Sounds much more proactive than reactive.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, we need to set ourselves on a plan that we can solve, we can improve the situation that we currently have across this country without bankrupting everybody along the way.